Let's cross to Westminster now, shall we? Joined by Labour's Shadow Minister for Europe, for North America and UK Overseas Territories, that's Stephen Doughty. Hello to you, Mr Doughty. Thanks for joining us on the programme this morning. Is the British government doing enough?
Well, we certainly welcome the fact that they've sent out that search and rescue team. I've met members of that team in the past, and having worked on earthquake responses in government and with the NGO sector, this period, these sort of 36, 48 hours are absolutely critical. I've met people from those teams before. They are absolutely incredible. I know that they're going to be out there straight away trying to rescue people from the rubble. But this is going to be a very long job, and obviously it's what comes next in the process. And you'll be seeing the horrific scenes yourself, Kay, but of course across the border in Syria, even more complex needs. Millions of people already there affected by war, by cholera, and of course a hugely complex political situation. So it's crucial that we get aid into there as well as into Turkey.
How do we do that? I know that the Syrian ambassador to the UN has been appealing for food aid. As you say, very complex situation in Syria, one of the towns where so many people had died as a result of the first earthquake, 7.8 magnitude. It was shelled shortly after. Thousands of people died as a result. What can we do to help?
Well, we've seen obviously despicable tactics by Bashar al-Assad in Syria, coming just after the earthquake, then shelling a town. And many of these towns are obviously already in ruins and rubble, people living in incredibly difficult situations. So obviously the humanitarian organisations on the ground, the NGOs, the Red Cross and Red Crescent and others are going to be critical. The United Nations, getting those access routes in. There's only currently one access route across the Turkish-Syrian border. That needs to be opened. We need to be talking to all partners in the region. And of course, Turkey itself operating on the Syrian side of the border as well. So coordinating with all of those who have teams on the ground, but crucially with the United Nations and others to get that access.
We heard from Andrew Mitchell, Foreign Office Minister, yesterday. He said Britain's always there first and in strength to help. Do you think that is still the case?
I certainly think the UK has done a good job in the last 24 hours in terms of getting those teams out, but unfortunately we have seen huge cuts in our development and humanitarian budget. As recently as December there were rumours that the UK was going to be cutting the budget to Syria, and that's again after years of war, disease and chaos and tragedy for the people there. So I do hope they're going to be looking very, very closely again at any suggestion that they would be cutting back support for people there at this critical time. What I do know is that the British people will respond remarkably, and they already are. I was speaking to colleagues yesterday who'd been engaging with communities, particularly from the Turkish and Kurdish communities in the UK, but also others who are raising funds. And I know people are already giving very generously to the NGOs, and I hope they will continue to do so. The British people are always first in responding to these terrible events.
Yeah, but what should we be doing about this aid budget? It was supposed to be 0.7% of GDP. We would have been leading the world, and with those sort of figures, it's been slashed to 0.5%. I pressed Mr. Hands on how quickly that. He did say it was going to revert to 0.7%. He couldn't say when.
No, absolutely. Look, we opposed the merger of the Department for International Development into the Foreign Office. Thought that created chaos at a time when we needed to be out there leading in the world. And as you say, there have been those horrendous cuts. I worked myself in the Department for International Development, responding to the Haiti earthquake in 2010. People remember that terrible, terrible event. And Britain needs to be out there leading in the world. And the suggestion that we would be cutting back support from Syria at a time like this, quite frankly, before the earthquake, was the wrong decision, and I hope that the government will be looking very, very seriously again about whether that is the right decision. Clearly isn't when we see the scenes of suffering on our screens.
Just before I let you go, Conservative Party have got a new chairman announced yesterday, happens to be Greg Hands. How fearful are you that he may be able to turn things around and get the Conservatives to win the next election?
Well, look, Rishi Sunak's having a reshuffle, barely 100 days into office, and we've seen the chaos of the last year with multiple prime ministers, multiple ministers. It continues to be chaos at the heart of the Conservative Party. I don't think Greg Hands is going to make any difference to that. I think what people want is serious, strong and stable leadership, and that's exactly what Keir Starmer offers, exactly the offer that we'll be putting to the country, and indeed with our local councils in the elections this year. I don't think Greg Hands is going to make any difference to how people view the chaos that we've seen over the last year.